Hi, and welcome to Whole Heart Transformation. I am Melissa Alguera, your personal identity life coach. Let's go to the podcast. Hey guys, welcome to Whole Heart Transformation. I've been sick for like a whole month, and so I haven't done any of my podcasts for the last 2 weeks. So I just wanted to let you know why I disappeared for 2 weeks. But now that I'm back, I have a little bit of congestion. So I just want to preface this time with that I do have congestion. So I apologize if I have to cough a little bit throughout this podcast. Okay, well, what I want to talk about today is something that I've been personally through, and also something that I feel is kind of still in the works of being discovered with what I have experienced in betrayal and how I've helped other clients that have walked through betrayal trauma, and what I found to be one of the key things to help in the process of healing betrayal trauma. So because betrayal trauma is based in pain, usually with a partner that, like a marriage partner or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or wife, depending on, who you are. The issue at hand is often a couple things. So you have the fact that you didn't know what you didn't know. You didn't know that the person that you were married to had another life that didn't involve you. You didn't know that they had these types of behaviors that didn't involve you. And then the other thing is that there's this piece that is not necessarily that I have found to be addressed, that is one of the keys to healing. And that is that when you experience betrayal, trauma in an intimate relationship, there's an isolation that happens. Now, Gabor Mate talks about how trauma happens when you experience something traumatic, and how it settles in the brain and the body is when you are alone and isolated. So betrayal trauma is absolutely an isolating experience. And I've found that the people that were not alone and had support when they started into their discovery phases of the betrayal, that those people, yes, they have a lot of pain, but for some reason, they were able to make it out with a little less trauma. Now, that's not to say that, this is the same situation for everybody. Your childhood affects how the trauma settles in your body. What it kicks up for you is a big deal. Obviously, if you had betrayal in your childhood by a parent, or you experienced things in childhood, maybe with friends, obviously betrayal when you're an adult is going to look very different, and it's going to hit on what's called your neural network. So we have, like those neural pathways in our brain and our body that become triggered by present memories or things that we see or experiences that are linked to the past. And so that's a part of your neural network. And so when you have a present day experience, it can actually trigger that neural network that maybe was dormant or not as activated and have it be go in deeper. So, you think about, they talk about how, like, if you use the neural pathway over and over and over, that groove is a lot deeper. And that's why a lot of people that struggle with addiction and stuff have struggled to get out of it when they use certain methods to try to get out. What I found with the style of coaching that I do is that you can dissolve that neural pathway, because ultimately that pathway is there because there's a part that's there that's been alone and isolated, rejected, pushed away, ignored, continued to use to cope. But when we undo aloneness, we pursue that part with grace and, go after it with fierce love, that part of that person can actually dissolve that neural pathway and integrate that part of them where they're no longer going to the same behaviors that they were to get to ignore and hide the pain that neural pathway started on. So this is very similar with betrayal trauma, because betrayal trauma is very isolating. Most of the people that I know, and even including myself, when I first discovered all the betrayal that my husband did, I was like, literally, I just wanted to isolate. Like, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I wanted to be utterly alone in the beginning, and started to become extremely depressed when I went through that. And so, that in itself is traumatizing. Part of the thing that I was trying to do when I was in the beginning of my journey was trying to find people that had a similar story to me, because I felt like, oh my gosh, like if nobody has a similar story to me, then I'm absolutely isolated and alone. And I felt that way for a really long time. Like, oh my gosh, like if nobody has my story, then I am alone. Like I am literally alone in this. No one else has been through this. I can't relate to anybody. And so then that puts that part of me, that betrayed part of me, into more isolation, more aloneness. And that is where trauma was settling in the worst for me. With that being said, okay, after having multiple betrayal experiences for many, many years, where I was isolated and alone, I didn't know anything about the addiction that my husband was dealing with. We had learned a little bit in the beginning of our marriage, but it was kind of told to us like, oh, he'll just have to manage. There's really no way to heal this. So he'll just have to manage himself, basically. And so I had no hope for me, in a sense, of how I was going to heal and overcome all of this trauma that is now in my brain and my body. And I kind of sat in a victim role for a really long time. And I was so angry with him, rightfully so, right? Like, obviously, like betrayal is disgusting in itself. Like it's a horrific thing to do to another person. But where I started to see the difference was when I started healing those parts of my story where I was alone. So how this works is, and I do this now in my coaching, and I've actually seen people heal from betrayal trauma in a whole new way, where I take bits of my story, parts of my story where there was betrayal that was happening, and I was literally alone in this. And I'm bringing this into relationship now with other people. And the really cool thing is we've built such a great community of people. Like God has blessed us with a community of people that know our story, that have not gone through what we've gone through. They've supported us. They've walked with us. They've wept with us. They've wept with us, and that's touching me, because I just remember feeling so alone. And to have people sit with you in the pain. They don't even know what you're going through. They haven't experienced the pain, but they can cry and weep and be with you. It's like, it's the most powerful experience that you can have. And so what I discovered is that when you've gone through betrayal, it is very similar to pain that you have as a child. Because it is attachment based, your marriage, your partnership, you become bonded and attached, just like you do in childhood. This person is there for your survival. We rely on them. They're our safe base to go back to. And when they are not our safe base anymore, when you have betrayal that happens, your whole system becomes totally messed up. You have parts of you that go into isolation and fragmentation, because, and I describe it like a shattered mirror. I felt like I was like a mirror that got completely shattered in all different directions, because there was details about my particular story and my husband's story that made the betrayal so much more painful and shattering for me. And so with that being said, there's all these parts of my story where I was literally alone, and my husband couldn't be there for me at that time because he had no capacity. He wasn't emotionally equipped. Obviously, if somebody is emotionally equipped to be supportive and empathetic, they wouldn't be doing the betraying behaviors that they did. That's why that's why they did the things that they did, because they don't understand these parts of adulthood that take to be an adult and make adult decisions, think about consequences. And then there's all the attachment factors to that as well, that were based in his childhood that he was just replaying. And honestly, I was the casualty of that. I was just the passenger along with that. And I did nothing to deserve that betrayal. There was nothing that I could have done to make him betray me the way that he did. That was already something that he was doing. That behavior was something that he was doing before me. But the hard piece of this is that because when we are kids, we think, because our partner, our attachment, our attachment figure when we are kids is kind of like, and I'm going to say this, so I hope that you get it from this perspective, but it's kind of like they're God, because they are the person that we rely on for our, nutrients, mother nursing, a child. That child is reliant upon that adult to provide the resource of life. So it is survival, right? And then when we're kids, we don't have the emotional or spiritual resources, or any other resources to be able to take care of ourselves, the brain power to be able to take care of ourselves. Our brain isn't developed enough. We actually need our family to provide that for us. Now, when we're adults and we have a lack of awareness about that we can provide that for ourselves, now we have the capacity, because we are adults, that the person that we are in partnership with, we don't need them necessarily for the same type of survival. Yes, we have the attachment and we have the bond, and it feels very similar, but we don't need them to survive in the same way that we do as when we are kids. But it feels that way. So then when we have the betrayal, the first thing often that most partners feel is like, what's wrong with me? Which is a very similar perspective that we have when we're kids, because we only have a limited capacity to say, oh, actually, like, there's something wrong in my partner that they're doing what they're doing. So when we do have a lack of internal resources for ourselves as partners, we will go to, what is wrong with me? Why am I not enough? How could they do this to me? Now, obviously, those are normal human emotions too. But what tends to push us over the edge is when we don't have the internal resources to understand that the person that we are attached to has problems and it has to do with them. Then we have to build our capacity to know the truth. And so the way we do that is by taking each part of us that was isolated and alone in the betrayal, and allow that part to process through the experience. And so the way I've walked my clients through this is I go in with them to that alone place, that part of them that went through that trauma or betrayal, that discovery, and they were completely alone. I would say 99% of the time when I am talking to partners, and even in my own story, we were alone. Like, there was nobody there to, witness that and go, oh, like, wow, he or she has issues. Like, this has nothing to do with you, and be with it and let, you weep in the arms. It's that moment of discovery that puts you in utter isolation. And I would say that often, because partners experience so much shame around the behavior of their partner that is betraying them, they are not able to bring this into a relationship with other people because they feel like something's wrong with them, or they don't want to expose their partner's behavior, which is, also a part of that adolescence perspective. Like, we don't want to expose the person that we are attached to. And that person actually needs exposure. Now, I'm not talking about shaming them or, going public and like shaming them publicly, but I'm saying like they need exposure with people that can help them. And, one of the big verses that, like, I feel like God really helped me with when I was in the separation phase with my husband. He was not repenting from his behavior. He was continuing on his behavior. We were separated. And then I had to build up resilience for 48 days to prepare myself internal resilience, internal strength to do what I needed to do in order to make movement happen for myself. So it took me about 48 days. I had to get help. I was having to process all of what was happening, all while nursing an 18-month-old and had an 8-year-old daughter at that time. So, and had a thriving hair business at that point. So I had to build my internal resources to be able to make the consequence steps that my husband needed. And so what happened was there was this point where I had built up enough resilience and internal strength where I was able to say, you know what, if you're going to continue in this behavior, then we're done. And now you can hear the strength that's in me, because there was something that happened to me after I built that resilience up. And it was just like, I became a stronger person, because after I had the discovery of the betrayal, I mean, I had so many more discoveries after that, so much shame, so much collapsing internally because I didn't have the internal strength to deal with the weight of what was discovered. I didn't have the emotional fortitude because a lot of my capacity was being extended out to my children and my job. And I didn't have the support to be able to make the decisions to kick my husband out. Now I had some support, but because my internal resources weren't strong or built up in order to say, you know what, no, I don't have to put up with this. Because I didn't have those internal resources, even though there were people that were helping me and giving me like good advice and good boundaries and helping me. I couldn't hold those boundaries because I didn't have the internal resources in order to be able to do the behavior of, not behavior, but like the behavior of following through with the consequences that needed to happen. So anyways, so after I got the internal resources and strength, I was able to hold the consequence. And so I said, I kicked him out of our house and I said, hey, like, if you cannot stop your behavior and go get help, then we're done. And so I did, I kicked him out. And there were requirements around that. Confession was a requirement. You need to confess to me what you've been doing, how you've been doing it, all of these things. And you need to go get help. That's the only way that you're coming back here ever, And even then, that might not be an option for you, depending on what I can handle, depending on what I want. And so this became this huge game changer, right? So then I was able to get that internal resource. But the problem is when he confessed all the things that he had done, that was where I started to collapse. And it was over a slow time. Okay. So because betrayal trauma is so isolating and so damaging to the brain and the body, because I had these confessions while we were alone, this is one reason why they say you need to have somebody there with you in the place of these confessions and get support. Because when you are alone and you don't have another person there to help you and mirror and see what's going on inside of you and see what's settling in your body, then you're going to have traumatization. And a lot of people want to do this fast and at home and quick, because a lot of betrayed partners want to know what happened. And hey, I get you in that. But as a person who it took a lot longer to recover because of multiple disclosures, I don't recommend it. And the reason being is, number one, trauma, but number two, then you have parts of you, each part of you is frozen in time. And so I've had to go through and I'm not done, because there were so many parts that got frozen in time. I have 13 years of frozen in time moments that I have to unpack. And the really cool thing is like, now I'll know which ones to go after, because like I'll have dreams about these different frozen parts in my life. And so how do we unfreeze these parts? Because they are frozen and they do get activated, they get re-triggered, and they need attention and they need care and they need to integrate. So how do we do that? Well, what I discovered, and this was through helping other partners and then realizing I needed more integration for myself, was going into those frozen moment times, checking in with the body, noticing what was happening with that part of them in that time. Literally, like that part is frozen in time. So if I go in with the person and we work through this and we find the part of them and we pull that part out of aloneness and hear that part's experience. And I know it sounds crazy, but I do this every day. That part, the parts of us that are stuck in isolation and aloneness, they are literally stuck in those places. And so we have to undo the aloneness of that part. So that's number one. Number two, giving that part a voice. Sometimes we have to role play in order to give that part of a voice. I had this beautiful experience, beautifully painful experience of being able to, there was like this one moment in my marriage where it was actually about 5 years into our marriage when my husband was starting to spiral in addiction again. And I could feel it. I could feel that it was happening, but I could not catch him. And so I remember there was this one picture that came to mind, and it was when we were dedicating our daughter to God at our church. It was a baby dedication, and I could see my face, and it was like my face like was literally like shut off. Like I had no affect. I was so traumatized by the discovery that I found just 6 weeks after my daughter was born, our first child. And I could not, number one, did not have the right resources for someone to help us with this problem that my husband had. Number two, there was no understanding in 2011 about betrayal trauma from what I understand. It's just become more of a thing now. Number three, I was getting horrible advice from the people around us. Just stay, just do this, just do that. It was horrible advice. But because I didn't have internal resources to say, you know what, this is BS. Like I need to go. I just carried on and brushed it under the rug and didn't know what to do and just pretending like it wasn't real. Even though I would try to find things, I would tell myself, oh, it's not that bad. Oh, it's to survive. But that part of me was stuck in time. So what I wanted to share really quickly was I was able to process this part of me in one of our group sessions with my partner and mentor. He ran that group that day. We have an awesome group that we run. It's called a food and family process. And we do this with some great friends. And I'm one of the coaches, and we have another coach, and then my mentor and partner, Aaron. And he was doing the coaching that day. And so I was able to process that part of myself with my husband, with the group. People were holding parts of me. People were in it with me. People were weeping with me. And I can feel that. Like, I remember just feeling so alone. And to be able to have people with me in that's what's bringing the emotion, is like that part of me didn't have anybody there. And now that part feels like I was able to reintegrate that part of me and grieve the deep losses that I didn't have the capacity to grieve. I was able to grieve the fact that we didn't have the right support, that my husband didn't have the support, that we had the support right then and there. And so what am I saying? What I'm saying is that when you go through betrayal and you have no one with you in that trauma, you are stuck in moments of time. And that frozen moment of time is where we have to go to. It's stuck in your body. We can deal with it in the present. We don't have to go and be re-traumatized and, go to a therapist and all activate. No, like it's in your body. So we can get curious in your body in the present. That's number two, right? Like in the present moment, you can be curious with your body of what part of you is stuck in time that needs deep healing, that needs to undo aloneness with other people that can hold space. And I can tell you, I have seen people that were so broken integrate these parts and they're thriving. I had one girl see me and she was like considering going back with a boyfriend that had this issue. She was redating him again and she was so lost in the trauma. We integrated the part of her that had discovery. She broke up with him. She was able to build enough internal strength after integrating that part. She broke up with him and then she started doing her own research on parts because it was so impactful for her. You see, this is what I'm talking about. And here's the thing. The third thought I have with this is when parts of us get stuck and frozen in time, we're missing a piece of us. So we have to reintegrate that part. Otherwise, that part is stuck and that part is reliving the trauma inside presently. And that part of us is not connected to us anymore. So we have to find that reconnection. And we can only do that through fierce love, grace, and undoing aloneness with people who understand how to do that. So I hope this gives you some hope today that you can heal in your process. And I'm so glad you joined me. Thanks for listening.
If you have found today's podcast helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. If you are interested in coaching with me, go to www.identitylife.coach. And you can also find me on Instagram, identity.life.coach.